Hey guys, J-Man here. Okay, we are doing something new today. This is going to be the first ever episode of J-Man and the Amazing Fans. Now, normally I'd be doing the X-Fans segment at this point, but I actually got a lot of requests from friends and family and others on different Facebook groups and Twitter saying that they love X-Men, but there's other characters that they want to talk about, like Incredible Hulk or the Phantom, or even like a Doc Savage. So they wanted it to be a little bit more open, and Superman, Batman obviously came up, Wonder Woman, those kinds of characters, Spider Man, and I thought, yeah, I mean, maybe because like I'm a big time nerd, I love a lot of different stuff. I'm not an expert on every character, but as you know, we're keeping these very informal. This isn't an interview where I'm going to ask a question and answer it. We're going to chit chat back and forth with my guests. Um, just like, two nerds, two geeks getting together talking about the character that they like or they love. So if you want to be a part of any of these segments, whether it's X-Men, or anything Marvel, DC, or even outside of that, like if you want to get into like a Mandrake or something, or if you want to go to like, maybe some of the pulp heroes like Shadow or Spider or whatever. I'm open to anything. You guys let me know in the comments of this video or any of my videos on YouTube, or you can find me on Twitter at Lifetime Nerd, and I'm on tons of Facebook groups and stuff too. So you can find me out there. Tell me what character you like, and I'll see if I can fit you in. All right, today we're talking about Tarzan. And Tarzan is a great character. I've loved him forever. So I've got a guest today. We're gonna bring him in right now, and his name is Scott Tracy Griffin. Tracy, how's it going, man?
Hi, great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, awesome! Thanks for coming on. This is exciting because it's like it's the first episode of this new segment, and also Tarzan has to be one of the first. Like, I don't know if you call him a super. He's not a superhero, but definitely like a hero, I would say, or
Yes.
he's like a he's like a phantom kind of character. It's like
Well, he was at the beginning of
he's the
this
beginning.
explosion of pop culture media, and I think he is the bridge between the sort of folk heroes like Paul Bunyan, and then the literary and cultural heroes that came later, like the superheroes and the pulp heroes, Doc Savage,
Yeah.
the Shadow. So he really is a bridge. And Edgar Rice Burroughs, all of his writings, John Carter of Mars, they sort of bridged that gap and took us into the 20th century, I think.
Yeah, he's a very important character, and like he's been around for forever. And anytime you think the character's kind of done, they always bring him back in some way. They just brought him back in Legend of Tarzan. Just as a weird coincidence, I watched Godzilla versus Kong today, and Skarsgård is in it, and I thought, oh my god, he could talk to he could talk to Kong, and then like they could team up or something. That'd be so cool. But I don't know why it just popped into my head, and I said to my wife, I'm like, "Oh, I said that that's Tarzan, the latest Tarzan." She's like, "Oh my god!" So it's like, I mean, we're like novels, uh, animated, live action, television series. I watched the Wolf Larson television series. I used to watch that all the time too. I mean, like he's just really come into everything, comic books, right? So he's everywhere. So how did you? I guess just tell us a little bit about like how did you get into Tarzan? And you're a little bit more than just a guy who just likes the movies and stuff. Like you've gotten a little further. So let us know what you've been doing with your love of Tarzan as well.
Okay. Well, I grew up in rural Mississippi, small town, and was a bookworm as a kid. There's not a lot to do in a small town, and I just gravitated towards sort of literary pursuits and discovered Edgar Rice Burroughs when I was 9. Walked in, we had a little independent bookstore. It's still there after 50 something years. They're still in business, and I think just past their 50th anniversary. And walked in, they had the big display of the Neil Adams and the Boris Vallejo Tarzans. And so I looked, I must have stayed there, an hour. I picked every one up and I read the back cover blurb. And there were a lot of, just these intriguing, like Tarzan and the Leopard Man and Tarzan and the Lion Man. But I decided to go with the very first one, Tarzan of the Apes, so that I would know, the story from the beginning. And it just, it wasn't just the character, it was the Burroughs writing that drew me in, the storytelling ability. And I think that Tarzan of the Apes was his high point as a writer. It was his third novel. And I think he really imbued it, really put his heart and soul into it. And after that, Tarzan blew up and became commercial. And writing these novels became a commercial enterprise. It was no longer an artistic enterprise. I think in his first 3 novels, Burroughs was trying to prove himself artistically. And once it became, oh, I can make a living at this, maybe I love all his work, but it's kind of like he took his foot off the gas a little bit. And I think, like everyone, I knew who Tarzan was. I had this osmosis idea. I'd seen snippets of the movies on TV and the Ron Ely TV show and various, odds and ends here and there. So I knew who Tarzan was and was kind of fascinated. I was an animal lover, loved, exotic animals like elephants and lions and apes and all that stuff fascinated me. My brother had the Tarzan lunchbox, which Tarzan is squaring off with a lion on one side and a gorilla on the other. And I was about 4 when he got that. And it just, intrigued me and fascinated me. I wanted to know more about this guy that could just take on, the animal kingdom and take on nature at its rawest element. And so, yeah, once I read the novel, I kept reading the novels as fast as I could and rereading them if I didn't have enough allowance to buy a new one, and moved on to Barzoom and then everything else Burroughs wrote. And so was just reading constantly through high school. And when I went to college, I didn't have a lot of time for fiction reading. But after I moved out to Los Angeles, hoping to help bring Edgar Rice Burroughs creations to more people, to bring them into new media. That was sort of my goal as an artist. So I moved to Los Angeles and started rereading everything, and eventually wrote 2 books, Tarzan the Centennial Celebration, which was for the 2012 100th anniversary of the character. It's an overview of the entire character. And then Titan Books, my publisher, was so happy they asked me to write a follow-up, which is Tarzan on Film, which covers the 53 authorized films and 7 TV series. So yeah, it's just been, I've just enjoyed it, really sort of being able to bring Tarzan, in my little corner of the world to a new generation through these books.
Yeah, I think a lot of people because when I was young, I'm not sure if maybe Greystoke was the first thing. I had a poster of Greystoke. You're going to absolutely cry when I tell you the story, because I had a poster of Greystoke in my room, and I was actually scared of the apes. Like, it's the one where he's like this or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
And for some reason, I had nightmares thinking, oh, the apes are like gonna try to like attack me. So my grandfather cut out like just Tarzan, and I'm just thinking, no, because I'm like a big time collector. Like I'm thinking, no, you're like thinking back, you ruined an original poster. It's like I'm gonna shoot myself. But I just like, oh, I thought this is so cool. Like, this guy's in the jungles and all that. And then I want to say that, I mean, everyone's seen. I brought out my Tarzan collection I was showing you earlier. Everyone's seen these, right? Like, these were on TV all the time. And this is where the Me Tarzan, You Jane whole thing came about. And I always thought Tarzan was kind of like that until I read the first book, and that's sort of where I'm like, it kind of blew my mind, and I thought, oh, I've got to re-examine this Tarzan character.
Yes.
And just even the way that he learned, I remember this stuck out. I mean, remember when he's learning how to read and he finds the books and he almost thinks it's like, I don't know if he thinks it's like bugs or something on the book, like it's like they're moving weird or something, and you're just like, this is so awesome. Did you read so I guess you've read all of the Burroughs books. There is other books? It continued after Burroughs, correct or no? There was other books, wasn't there?
Not immediately. His family was very protective of his legacy, and they did not initially want anyone touching his work. Then I guess there are a few other pastiches crept out over the years. Fritz Leiber did Tarzan in the Valley of Gold with the 1966 movie with Mike Henry. He did the novelization. There'd been a couple of novelizations that were published in the newspapers back during the silent era. There were juveniles like Tarzan and the Lost Safari, which was a juvenile novelization of that movie. And so now in the modern era, Philip Jose Farmer did one. The Burroughs Irby Inc., the company that holds the trademark, has started licensing new novels from a variety of authors. Will Murray, who carried on the Doc Savage franchise, he has done 3 Tarzan novels, 2 standalone Tarzan novels, and one Well, one's a crossover with John Carter, one's a crossover with King Kong, and then the standalone Tarzan. So, and I'd been reading Will's Doc Savage and enjoying him. Glad that Doc's legacy could continue. And so I emailed him. I was like, Will, you got to talk to the Burroughs people. They may license a Tarzan novel. And at the same time, Joe DeVito, his artist, had also sort of put Tarzan on his radar. So I was very happy that they hired Will, because I think he's just a terrific sort of neo pulp writer out there that's carrying on the tradition.
I like Doc Savage as well. I've got a Doc Savage statue, like a big one, and first ever Fortress of Solitude was
Yes.
Clark Savage.
Yes.
that I got Superman's my guy. Like he's my guy from day one. Tattoo Superman. Superman's my favorite. And when I read Doc Savage, I bought some of the reprinted pulps, and I was like, oh dear. I'm like, I was like, there's a lot borrowed from Doc Savage.
Yes.
And there's a lot. Edgar Rice Burroughs would have to sue everybody that's alive right now, or anybody that made sci-fi apps, because like so many things, like John Carter's been pillaged for ideas. And I remember the Harry Potter stuff, and I was like thinking, wow, I've seen. I was like, I know I've seen this before, and it's all from Edgar Rice Burroughs. That guy's a genius. Like,
yes. And even tiny things that people don't realize, the spit curl, the little curl on Superman's forehead, that came from Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan, because Tarzan had that little lock of hair.
Yeah, it actually was funny before, because I was all excited today, and I ended up watching. I didn't get a chance to finish it because I had to come set the computer up. But I started watching King Kong, Tarzan Escapes. So I just randomly, like, I just took the disc out and put it in, and whatever it was whatever it was. Maureen is the best Jane. I think. I don't know. Is there a better Jane than
she? Was wonderful, and they had a wonderful chemistry.
Yeah.
I think the chemistry. Brenda Joyce has her followers. She did 5 films. So and I like Frances Gifford. She was not a Jane, but I liked her in the role. Really liked her. I think there have been a lot of great, but there was just something special about Maureen and Johnny. They just became an iconic romantic couple.
Yeah. Anytime you Google anything, it's just like it's those two as the photo or whatever. And I'm not too. Basically, these are the only kind of movies I've seen of the older ones. I don't know every. I'm trying to think, like, I think after those old ones, the first one where I started then would have been Greystoke, I guess. Was that the first? Because I guess you would be the person to ask. Was that the first time where they made it more like gritty? I don't know if you want to call it gritty, but I don't know what's the word for it. Like a more not realistic. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, it's a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The Tarzan films fall into distinct eras. There were 8 silent films, including the serials, and they all were based on the books, the novels, to varying degrees of success. Some of them almost in name only.
Right.
So Tarzan of the Apes, the very first one with Elmo Lincoln, followed the Tarzan story. They added a fair amount of stuff to sort of get by, rather than Tarzan learning to read on his own. A marooned sailor teaches him to read, and then the guy sets off for civilization to provide rescue. And so the first 8 were very loosely based on the books. Burroughs wasn't happy with that. He didn't feel like they were doing him justice. And so when he sold the license to MGM, he said, you can have the character's name, but I don't want you to incorporate any elements of the book. So Jane Porter became Jane Parker. And that happened all the way through the Mike Henrys, through MGM, Saul Lesser, who took over the franchise, the independent producer. Cy Weintraub took over. Tarzan was just this sort of, eventually became this sort of independent guy. They dropped Jane. And it wasn't until Greystoke that they went back to the novels. And so the last 3 big films, Greystoke, Disney's Tarzan, and Legend of Tarzan, did incorporate more of the storyline and the elements of the novels. But yeah, that had been avoided for 50 years. And of course, they all sort of went back to the first novel. There were 24 novels. So there's a lot of untapped stuff, that has not been on screen yet.
Do you think, I mean, I'd like to see someone, I don't want to say Marvel, like MCU it or whatever, not in the way that you'd think, but like maybe someone to say like, look, why don't we take this series and let's try to do like almost a James Bond or something where it's like, well, the Bond movies, a lot of them had the name, some of them had the names of the books, but then they didn't really follow it. But I mean, almost where they take like each book. I don't know if you can make 24 movies, if you can get someone who can commit to 24 movies, but do something like a Lord of the Rings or something where you take like a more epic approach. I had a feeling that um, the Legend of Tarzan, I wasn't sure if that was going to lead into anything. I don't know what the box office was on that one, but I thought it was pretty sick. Like, actually, I thought it was pretty cool. Now, I don't know how accurate it is to any of the books, really. And I guess you can tell me if it is or isn't. Um, but I don't know. It just kind of like it seemed like it had a lot of momentum going into that movie, and then it was just like, oh yeah. And then, do you think the superheroes ruin Tarzan?
Well, it outperformed expectations. It made about 357 million at the box office on a 180 million budget, so it was right sort of at the break even to for a sequel. But I think yeah, it was a lot of things. A competitive marketplace. It just did not break out as big as they had hoped. I know they had there was talk of a sequel and maybe going to Opar. The sequel Opar is of course mentioned in the plot to the first one. Um, so yeah, it's unfortunate. I would have liked to have seen another one, and of course, there's the baby. They have the baby that in the third Tarzan novel, the baby gets kidnapped, and there's this chase through the jungle after the baby, and then of course the baby grows up and runs away to the jungle at the age of 10 or 12, and becomes a young Tarzan himself. So there was a lot to tap on, and I just think that it didn't perform as well as they would like for it to get a sequel, and it's a shame. The movie had, I think, 5 Oscar-nominated, Academy Award-nominated actors in it, which is probably, unusual for any movie, much less a Tarzan movie. Just the amount of talent that they had arrayed in that movie. And when Skarsgård eventually, I think he'll get an Oscar nom, then you'll have 6 Academy Award nominees in that movie.
Yeah,
so yeah, I would love to see more.
Yeah, it's weird. Even when and we can hit up so actually just to bring this back up. So in this book, Casper Van Dien, I see he did the forward to it. And did you like the Casper Van Dien movie? Because I kind of liked it. I bought the poster. I have the movie on DVD, and I was really kind of into it. I thought it was cool because it felt like we got to see a little bit of him being the Earl and all that, and it's like, and then he has to go back, which is Legend of Tarzan. Just the basic format of it is he's already established, and then now he's going back.
Right.
That, you know what I mean? And I always thought that was kind of cool because you always saw the movies where it's like, oh, it's going to be Tarzan in the jungle and whatever. But this one was like a little bit different.
Did you like reversed his journey?
Reversed, yeah. Did you like the Casper?
I did like the Casper. I really enjoyed it, and I reported on that. I don't know if you remember Cinema Fantastique magazine.
Yes, I do.
I used to write for them, and I reported on that and interviewed Casper and the producer and the writer. I thought they did a solid job for the budget. It was 20 million or less at the time. I think Greystoke's budget 15 years before had been 30 million. So, I think the one thing they felt was the ape suits were a little lacking, but I thought it delivered across a lot of fronts, had a lot of animals in it. Tarzan rides into the village on an actual African elephant. He picks off the bad guys one by one as he's tracking them, and they had all these different. They had the savannah and the jungle and the mountains, and so it had great scope. They did, in the original script was a little more gritty, a little more violent, a little more adult, and so they cut a lot of that. Some of it for budget, some of it because they wanted to appeal to a younger audience. I would have liked to have seen some of those, the more serious action elements in it. But no, I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was great. I've seen it several times. Have met and hung out with Casper at conventions a few times. He's a great guy, very fan oriented. And I thought, he and Jane, I thought everybody did a good job with it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really cool, and I got the movie poster. I went to it and got the official one sheet, the what's the size, 40 by 27 by 40, whatever, like the actual proper poster. I can't remember if it was double sided in those days or not, but I was, and I still have it. So that one I didn't cut Tarzan out of that one. I kept him. I want to say hi to James in the chat. Let's see what James has got to say. Maureen was a great actress. For granted, she also two peas and Tarzan made. Yeah, well, there is that. There is that. All right, James again. Right, right, right. Yeah, I mean, so it's tough. Okay, so Tarzan. Okay, let's talk about Greystoke for just a second because I thought. So I've got this version. I should really get the Blu-ray because I think they cleaned it up a lot better. But when I saw this, we're talking about the apes and all that. I was like, I couldn't tell if they were apes or people. I don't know. Maybe it's just my mind at the time, and I haven't. I showed this to my wife. I want to say a few years ago, and I still thought it held up like pretty darn good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Robert Town, he wrote the screenplay initially, and that was right when he was on the streak with Chinatown, and had three Academy Award nominations in a row. He was at the peak of his powers, and he went back to the book, the original novel, and he did it as a very serious and realistic approach to the material. His script ended when they reached the trading post. He never wrote the final act because that was sort of his bargaining chip. He wanted to direct. That was going to be his directorial debut. And the movie just kept getting bigger and more expensive. So they had him direct Personal Best. That movie underperformed, and unfortunately, he didn't get to direct. So they brought Hugh Hudson in, and of course, the movie takes an entirely different direction in the second half when they go to England. But yeah, I thought that the jungle sequences were spot on. I loved Rick Baker's work, The Apes. Thought that this was another opportunity throughout Burroughs. Throughout the history of pop culture, Burroughs has a lot of times been his novels, his work has been sort of at the forefront of technology. Like it was it was the first, I believe, first pre-recorded radio show. So they could put the animal sound effects in it and the gunshots and the screams and everything. They didn't do it live. They pre-recorded it and did it on discs. Tarzan, one of the first big adventure strips of the Sunday comics. So, it's great to see the latest cutting edge technology. And I think we saw some of that with the Legend of Tarzan again with the CGI animals. The only animals, I believe, were a couple of goats in the native village. So it's nice to see Burroughs franchise be at the forefront of emerging technology. And yeah, I just, followed it right along and having read the books and really, really enjoyed it.
So okay, another one just to go through everything that I've got. We've got the Disney Tarzan. Now,
Yes.
I want to say something before I let you go on that one. So when I heard they're doing Disney Tarzan, I thought, oh man, I don't know. I was really like thinking this is gonna not be great because I was like, is Tarzan gonna be singing and all that? And I thought, ooh, and I like a lot of the Disney movies growing up, but I was more of an anime person growing up. So I was watching like Akira, and people are telling me, oh, this is great, and it's like, have you seen Akira? Or I'm watching I'm watching stuff that I'm not supposed to be watching. I'm watching Friday 13th movies when I'm 11, and I'm watching Shogun Assassin and all this stuff, Lone Wolf. So, anyways, and then you watch these Disney movies, you're like, these aren't cutting it. But anyway, so they're going to do Tarzan. I thought, oh man, this is going to not be good. And then it's like Phil Collins. I thought, oh man, I'm like, oh, I don't know. And I ended up seeing the movie twice in the theater. I kind of loved it. I know all the songs now. I don't know what happened, but like they didn't. It felt like this was like pretty cool. I know they changed a few things and like they added. I like instead of having a villainous ape, they had the villainous. It was like a cheetah or something. I don't know.
Right.
They changed that, and I think they wanted it to be because they wanted to keep it simple. Like all the apes are good, right?
Yes.
And Tarzan is with them, as opposed to having this gray area of like, well, look, they're fighting. Like you watch Greystoke, and those two guys are like kicking the crap out of each other, right? You're like, well, that's
Yes.
not going to be a Disney's thing. But I felt that the character, I don't know, for some reason, I felt like the spirit of Tarzan like was in that animated character. I was really shocked. And I forced all my friends to go. I'm like, okay, we got to go. I went twice in the theater to see it. And then I watched it like tons of times. What were your initial thoughts hearing about the animated thing, and then what did you think of it after you saw it?
Well, when I heard they were doing it, I was happy. I mean, I probably, like a lot of people, had a little lower expectations. But on the other hand, I knew, okay, this is geared for kids. This is something you can take a 3 or 4 year old to, and it introduces Tarzan to a new audience because the kids this age, they're not going to be reading the original novel. So
Right.
I that was sort of my uh, silver lining in it to begin with was, okay, great, because in the Disney Renaissance in the 90s, that was an art form unto itself. There were only 10 or 11 of those films, and Tarzan got to be one of them. So I was happy once again that every bit of money and technology that could be thrown at Tarzan was to put him on the screen. And so I said, you know what? It's just enough to get it out there for kids. And when I went, I was pleasantly surprised, like you said, that Tarzan wasn't singing, that it had, they got Phil Collins, percussionist, jungle drums to do it. So, there might have been a few little quibbles I had with it, but for the most part, really like it. Like you said, I thought it got the spirit of the novels. They changed some things, and I thought they approached the material with respect. So yeah, overall, I was happy with it. And I tend to be an optimistic, positive person, or I try to be. So I try to look for the good in things. I think back, there was a bit of frustration when I was younger. Sometimes if something is low budget or you feel like the producers cut corners, you're like, oh, this was our one chance for these licensed properties. If you have a bad, Superman film, you may not get a Superman film for
I know.
2 more years. Same thing with Tarzan. A bad Tarzan film or TV show or John Carter is going to knock us out of the running for years to come. So anytime it's big budget and A-list and it succeeds, I'm happy.
Yeah, it brings that's my theory too. It brings awareness of the character to regular people, and kids can go watch it. And then there was the Tarzan 2, and there's like a cartoon series after that. And I whenever I watch anything, I'm a sucker for fantasy. Whenever I'm watching something, I'm not thinking, oh, this is not looking that good, or this doesn't. I'm into it. Like when I was watching Tarzan Escapes, like literally, let's say 2 hours ago, I was like, oh, this is pretty damn cool. Like when he's swinging around, like, oh man, this is. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, well, there's no CGI, so that's that schmuck swinging around and jumping around. You're like, oh my god, like if he falls, he's gonna get hurt. And like the stuff with the animals is cool, and it brings more of appreciation. And I don't have any children, but I have nieces and nephews, and whenever they come over, like we'll throw in like I throw in Superman, and they're like, wow, this is the greatest thing ever, right? And they're not thinking, oh, the effects aren't as good as today's effects or whatever. They're just into the story. And I think that's what they got with Tarzan. I showed the Disney Tarzan to an employee of mine. She's like 20 years old. She doesn't know anything about Tarzan. She knows the name Tarzan. That's it. I said, well, let's watch this. She was crying, like legit tears. Like she's crying. She's like, wow, that was so good. I was like, yeah. I'm like, I'm not showing you some rubbish. Like this is, she just thought, oh, Tarzan's running around naked in the jungle. Like literally, that's their impression of it. Versus, now they're seeing like Iron Man and Thor, and it's like Tarzan. He's like some jungle guy, but it's exciting, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with that character. James, what's
Yeah.
going on? Disney Tarzan was my introduction to the character. Yes, yeah, no, big impression. Yeah, yeah, the animation was killer. Yeah, I mean, I was really shocked because yeah, I really got into it big time, and I've watched it at least I don't know how many times, 6 or 7 times. What about TV? What about some of the TV stuff? Did you ever watch the Wolf Larson Tarzan show? Do
Well,
you know?
I grew up, as I was discovering Burroughs, I grew up on the Filmation. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
those from the 1970s.
yeah,
And, some people knock it for the rotoscope because they would recycle the animation, but I loved it. I think they adapted at least 5 of the novels, into a 20-minute cartoon, and really kept the spirit, always finding a lost city. And Tarzan was
right.
noble and strong and honorable. And so I grew up on that one, loved that. Ron Ely, I saw those off and on, sort of hit and miss. Then when they came out on DVD as I was writing my novel, I got them and I rewatched them, and they were showing on Heroes and Icons. He's again, it takes this sort of strong, noble tradition. It diverges from the books a bit, but I like Ron's portrayal. Um, the Wolf Larson was sort of a return to the Johnny Weissmuller. So to me, and I know Wolf's a great guy, and the stuff he did, you talk to these guys, it's just amazing. The physical interaction with the animals they had to do, the stunts, putting their life in danger, and have a lot of respect for Wolf and what he did for that with that. But it was 30 minutes. It was geared to kids. That was one of those where I felt like this could have been so much more, so much better. And sort of same with the Joe Lara. They took it sort of back to Burroughs' concept with Tarzan the Epic Adventures, but then they just, they had really low budget, and I just felt like they didn't really pull the trigger on that. So, like the Disney's Legend of Tarzan, again, they went back to the books and brought in new characters, and so I really like that series. I watched all those a couple of times for when I was writing my book. So in general, that's sort of my overview of the TV show.
Well, I remember the cartoon. I don't have the cartoon, but I am going to order it. And I remember seeing it now. I think it's part of the archive collection or something. It's like with Thundar. But I have all those. I have like Zorro, and it was Zorro and Lone Ranger together, and I've got like Rocket Robin Hood, and I got He-Man's my J-Man is from He-Man. The J logo that I have has the crack in it. I don't know if you're a He-Man guy. I remember you'd punch the battle armor He-Man, a crack would come on his thing, and that's my logo. Yeah. So I'm a big time filmmaker. I love the rotoscoping is sick. Fire and Ice. Have you ever seen Fire and Ice?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's the damn best movie. And Frazetta is and you talked about Boris earlier with the art. I've not missed a Boris calendar since 1992 or something. Like every year I get the Boris. Now it's Boris and Julie, but I get the calendar every time. And like Frazetta, all those guys. The other guy, Joe Jusko.
Yes.
So I met him, and he signed. I have a Namor. Namor's one of my favorites. Another naked naked guy with green instead of but yeah, and he signed one of those, and yeah, his Tarzan stuff is killer too.
Yes. And he's doing new paintings for the company, new illustrations for the novels. Yes.
Oh my God.
I'm just pulling out all the stops. Yeah. It's Joe's Tarzan. It's Joe's, this is sort of he's at the peak of his powers, and they're just every painting is a masterwork.
Yeah. And like, let's face it, we're buying these, like, look, I'm buying these for the covers. When I discovered Conan, who's also one of my favorites, and Tarzan and all these guys, like, I went in there, I don't care what's going on. I'm just like thinking, well, this looks cool, and I'm buying it based off the cover. That's me as a teen. Don't judge a book by its cover. But if it had Frazetta, like I've got the first Frazetta Conan. Yeah. I didn't give a crap about Conan until I saw Frazetta, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, it's like this book is going to automatically be good.
The images have to grab you. That was the whole thing, is the cover's got to grab you. It's a crowded marketplace, and who's going to invest time in reading something unless you have a hook to pull you into it.
I find that a lot of even with movie posters and with just art in general, it's kind of gone slightly down. It's a lot of it like it's just like the person's face or something.
Yeah.
I really don't like that, because I'm a poster collector. I've got about 150 posters, and I've got like Road Warrior, and I've got weird posters which you can't see, but I mean, I got like Police Academy 4, which, I mean, the movies are silly, but the poster, it's all done by I just lost the guy's name. This is why you don't do live TV or live YouTube. I forgot the guy's name.
Well, it wasn't Struzan, was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I think that's and he did all of those famous.
Yeah, he did the Bo Derek Tarzan.
Yeah. Name anything that's like some kind of iconic thing. Yeah, so it's like, and the art is just gone now. Like, I'm trying to see what's an example that I could show. But you guys, people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's all just digitally enhanced photos. I love the painted posters. In my book, Tarzan on Film, every film back in the golden era had a painted poster, and they were just gorgeous. And that, sort of petered out after I guess maybe the 90s, the painted poster. There's still some people doing it, but I wish we could go back to that era, because that just beautiful work that that you can't achieve that same effect through digitally manipulating photos.
Yeah, no, and I'm looking at, like this is Legend of Tarzan, right? So that's kind of like, it's just him, right? And then I think it was I think the theatrical one was just like the side, like the profile shot of him with the. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's cool, but like, and unfortunately, the DVDs don't really give you a very good, because none of these, I mean, like this was the poster of that I had, And at least that's somewhat kind of cool because there's like, looks like there's some
Mhm.
like, badass guy, doing something. So that's kind of cool. James, Photoshop, yeah. I know. It did. It did. I think I think there's a lot of like we have to produce this quickly. We have to get out there fast, and I think some of the artistry is lost in that, even in the filmmaking itself, because you're putting so much money into something that when you're telling me that a Tarzan movie's making 300 whatever million, to me that's like, wow, that's great. Yeah, they're like, yeah, but it cost them 180, and then they had to do all this advertising and they had to do all this stuff, and it's like, well, you're never gonna make more than double. You know what I mean? It's like a movie has to double or more for it to be worth anything. And how are you going to continue that, right? Like when a movie makes $400 million, I'm like, damn, it only made 400 million. This sucks. It's like, what world are we in?
Yeah.
I mean, they produced. I don't know if I'm a horror movie nerd as well. I love the Saw series. And each movie
Mhm.
costs like $1 million. The first movie cost $1 million, which probably went to half of it to Danny Glover. And then they made they're like, we can make 8 movies after this because it made like 50 million and it only
Yeah.
cost 1 million. So it's like Tarzan requires a lot of work, and
Yeah.
it's not that easy. So it's weird. I don't know what they could do. Like, what about John Carter? We can throw John Carter. Did you read all the John Carter stuff?
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, that's the thing was Burroughs' writing. Most of it was so epic in scope that it's got to have that big budget, just to reproduce whether it's the creatures, in
Mm-hmm.
these planetary romances, the lack of gravity on Mars, the jumping, and that's why it took a century to get John Carter to the screen because they had tried to crack that nut, from every different angle, and they just did not have the money and the technology to do it justice. So yeah, that's the thing is Burroughs' epic scope means his movies to do them justice, you need a lot of money, and it's a risk in the marketplace. Um, but he wrote other things, westerns and historical adventures. So maybe we'll see something in another genre. He did, of course, the Land That Time Forgot trilogy. They did 2 of those in At the Earth's Core back in the 70s. Those were not big budget movies. They had the rubber dinosaurs and the puppets and
Yeah.
everything. But yeah, I think his material is ripe for new interpretations. It's just finding the money and the risk.
My first ever YouTube video was reviewing John Carter. I keep wanting to call it John Carter of Mars, but that's not what it's called. The movie was just called John Carter, I
Yeah,
think, right? Yeah. But it had the M. If you looked at the initial release, like the initial release posters,
right.
it said JCM and had that weird M. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't you put Mars? Because I'm thinking if you put Mars in the title, I'm like automatically gonna. I already knew who John Carter was, but if I didn't know, if I'm a geek and I see Mars, something's happening on Mars, it's like, oh, I'm in, right? And they took that out. And people I think were kind of confused. I thought the movie was a lot of fun. I mean, and I powered through the first 3 books before the movie came out. I was like, I should really get these. And they did these really nice editions with these really nice covers. I thought, let me just power through these right now before I go see the movie. I mean, it changed stuff. Okay, so everything changes everything. There's never been a comic book or any movie based on any comic book or whatever that's been exactly that because it's impossible.
Right.
So they're going to change what they got to change. But I thought John Carter was pretty cool. I thought, oh, here we go. And I started, like, I'm one of these guys, as soon as I see John Carter, I'm thinking, oh my God, Tarzan's going to be in this thing. He's going to team up with them. Like, there's going to be this whole thing. And it's like, nope. So I was sad that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I thought they did some things really great, like the Thark hatchery and the baby Tharks
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and his introduction in Woola. A lot of that was straight from the book, and I thought it was great. The plot, I think, maybe was a little convoluted for people who didn't know the mythology because they were planning a trilogy and they were bringing in elements from the what were supposed to be the future movies. So I think it was a little complicated, maybe for people who are wanting entry level John Carter.
Right.
But I thought they did a lot of things right, and a lot of there are a lot of things that are great in the movie. Has some great emotional beats. You mentioned the emotional beats of Disney's Tarzan and how it can really evoke strong emotions in you. And I thought there were moments like that in the John Carter movie. They talk about sacrifice and sacrificing one person for a planet and things like that. So yeah, I wish it had done better. I wish we'd gotten more. Hopefully someone will pick up the baton. It's been 9 years now.
Been a while.
So we're overdue. We're overdue for another John Carter.
Do you think? I'm wondering if they would do any of these in comic book form. I don't know who owns. I wonder. Do you know who owns the comics, or like, is it
Yes.
Dynamite? Is it
Well, I worked for the company for 3 years, so I dealt with all these people. Dark Horse owns the Tarzan rights.
Dark Horse? Okay.
Dynamite has
John Carter.
John Carter.
Yeah.
And they're, I think, having more success with Deja Thoris than John Carter. Sort of.
Yeah, they are. I see her out all the time.
Their breakout character.
Yeah.
And then there's a small company called American Mythology that has several of the other properties. Land That Time Forgot, Pellucidar, Monster Men, Moon Maid, and they just announced Beyond the Farthest Star, I think.
Okay, yeah. So I've never heard of that other company, but yeah, I knew Dynamite had John Carter, and yeah, Deja Thoris is like she's all over the place, and they've got killer covers for that too. And I think I may have some of those digitally. I got them digitally, but yeah, I don't think like Tarzan currently. I go to the comic shops every Tuesday. I don't think I've seen him.
Very little. Yeah. I think Thomas Yates did a sort of Tarzan in the future, the once and future Tarzan. And I love Tom's work. I think he does a great job with it, but it's just, I think there's a big untapped market there. You've got to keep these characters in front of the public to be competitive, because the public has a short memory, and if you're not out there in the marketplace competing, it just makes it all the harder to sort of get back into the marketplace.
Yeah, they throw Doc Savage every so often. I mean, Green Hornet just had another series end, or I don't know if it ended. It's been like 4 issues. I haven't seen the next one, but like, I see a lot of these guys still they plug away, like the Spider. Was that Dynamite? Yeah, Dynamite had the Spider going for a while. That was pretty good. They had Shadow in there. Like, you see them pop in. It just Tarzan for whatever reason, I haven't seen him pop up, but almost everyone else I can think of has popped up. The Phantom has never stopped. I don't know who's taking it over now. I guess the protege or whatever is still writing the Phantom strip every day.
And there's a tremendous backlog. There's 70 years of Tarzan comic strips, newspaper, Sundays and dailies. So there's material out there that could find a new audience.
Yeah, they should do something with that. I mean, and they must have released some of these strips in some form, because I've been collecting the Phantom and just the Alex Raymond Flash Gordons. I can't remember who took over after. I'm the worst with names. Like, I'll just unless it's like somebody obvious or whatever. But like after Alex Raymond, I can't remember who took over Flash Gordon, but they were publishing those. So these things are out there to get. You just have to kind of know to search to get them.
Well, Hal Foster and Vern Hogarth, their runs have been reprinted twice in the last 25 or so years by NBM and then by Titan and Dark Horse. And the Russ Manning's got a really great treatment from IDW. They did a 4-volume Russ Manning set. I forgot about that. Yes, they did a terrific job with that. But again, there's many, many years and great artists, underappreciated artists like John Solardo and Bob Lubbers, who I would love their work to find a new audience.
Yeah, and I mean, and now with digital and stuff too, it's like, I mean, like half the stuff I still buy the physical comics at the shop to support my shop. So it's like I get the Batman, Supermans, all that. And then digital is a great place if you just want to like just randomly check something out and you don't really have to spend a lot. And it's not a big investment. You just, and you get these crazy collections. Like it's like $10 and you get like 2 years of Phantom or whatever. I mean, it's nothing, right? So you could easily like get into some of this. And I think there is some Tarzan stuff on there. And the Kindle book, I mean, the Tarzan books, I have them all on the Kindle app for free. They're all free because they're all public. Are they all public domain? Yeah, are they public domain or no?
Is Canada, are you on the EU? They are in the EU now.
Oh yeah.
About half of his work is in public domain in the United States, but I think most of it went into the public domain in the EU this past year.
Yeah, so I'm actually just checking to see if they were. I may have bought them. I don't think too much about it. I'm like, I'll just get, because even if you buy it on Kindle, it's like $1 or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure at least the first few Tarzans for sure were free on Kindle.
Yeah.
I have so many I can't even go through it all, but like yeah, um, there's a lot of free stuff on here. Alan Quatermain is free too. All of those, so you can get a lot of them. I can't tell. I can't. It doesn't. Unfortunately, I can't tell which ones were free and which
Yeah.
ones weren't. But I think a lot of them were free.
Yeah.
Um, so you could get these like right now, and everyone, and you could read that on any app. Like it's you just need the app. It's like you can read it on your
Yeah.
phone, so it's super available. Where would you like to see? What would you like to see next if you could pick something for Tarzan? Like, would you like to see another movie or book or?
A streaming series. A
Mm,
streaming series for Tarzan and John Carter, where you take a book and you break it down into maybe 10 chapters, 10 installments, and go book by book. So that's what I would love to see is because with the streaming series you get 8 or 10 installments, um, so you get several hours of content rather than just a feature film. So that would be what I'd love to see is for both Tarzan and John Carter is a streaming series.
yeah, that would be the way to go because you could do a lot. And basically, these shows now. I mean, like me, I don't know how old you are. I'm 43. Like when I was younger, like to me, it's like we're watching episodic TV. Like you miss an episode of Star Trek, you're like, all right, well, I missed one. I'll just whatever. I know who everyone is. But now they're basically 10-hour movies where they just cut it into 10 sections, and they don't even cut it into 10 sections because the entire 10 episodes just comes out, and
Yeah,
then you just binge it anyways. I mean, I binged that Cobra Kai season 3 in like one sitting because I'm such a Karate
yeah,
Kid nerd. And so I'm like, I would like, and like Daredevil and like some of these shows are so high quality now. You're like, oh my god, can you imagine Tarzan? Like that'd be sick. You could literally like you could adapt forever. Like that series can go on forever as long as you get someone who's willing to put in the time, or even if you wanted to, you could always pass if you could pass the torch on to someone else. Like I don't know, I don't mind if actors change after a while. I don't know if you're a
yeah.
Doctor Who. I'm a Doctor Who guy too. I don't, if the actors change, they change. But like you could easily take the first book and yeah, make a mini series, and then just make multiple mini series. And like John Carter, man, like that's just aching to come back. I think a lot of people liked that John Carter movie, but it's almost like just general perception was like, oh, it's not that good. And if you ask anybody, I have a tough time finding anyone who hated it. They're like, yeah, that was kind of cool, right? But it's just the general idea was like, oh, it wasn't that good. But I haven't found anyone who's really hated it or could explain why they hated it if they did.
I think the media on for both John Carter and Tarzan underestimated it, and so that set perceptions, and I think too because the Burroughs franchise is sort of a little independent that could, and it doesn't have the power behind it that Marvel and Disney have. Even if Marvel or even if Disney releases it, it's sort of seen as a one-off. Whereas, with these Marvel movies, you've got an investment in 10 films and they're going to happen, regardless of whatever the perception is. So I think that's part of the problem is that these movies come out as sort of the perception is they're a one-off independent, and they've really got a higher bar that they have to get over, on a lot of fronts. They don't have the name recognition and so forth. So it's a high bar for success for them in the marketplace, I think.
So James is saying this French comic publication is releasing a new Tarzan comic. I did not know about this at all. Um, I mean, if you can get it digitally, my comic shop gets everything. It's like a super big comic shop, so if it gets it, I will definitely check it out just to see what they're up to. I like checking these out because sometimes you get a little bit tired of. Well, that's a lie. I never get tired of Superman. But I mean, sometimes you're like, it's just another one of these. Like, let's try something different, and then you discover a cool character. I remember when you'd go and there's all these characters to discover, and each one would bring something different to the table. You thought, oh, this is so cool. And now it seems like if there wasn't a movie, I think the mentality now is that if there wasn't a mainstream big budget movie that made a lot of money, people don't care. And I see that as a comic book nerd. Like I'm wearing my little WandaVision, and now that WandaVision has come out, oh, everyone loves Vision and all that, right? And I'm like, well, I've got
Yeah.
Vision stuff like behind me from like I've got the first appearance of the White Vision. You know, everyone's talking about the White Vision now. It's like, well, I had that off the rack as a kid,
Yeah.
and I wasn't afraid to experiment to try different things. It's like if I don't know what the character is, let me check it out and see. And now it's just like, well, I only want Batman because he's the coolest, and if it's not Batman,
Yeah.
then screw this, right?
Well, everything is driven by film and streaming. So, you have to start with that if you want your franchise to have legs, to have longevity. I mean, it's great to put out the collectibles, it's great to put out new books, new comics, everything, but to really reach tens of millions of people, it's got to be on a screen.
Yeah. James is asking, who do you for live action Tarzan for streaming series? I have no idea. Some unknown person, I would think.
Yeah, I tend to like the unknown. Tarzan's such an iconic role, and so so difficult, such big shoes to fill, so to speak, for a barefooted guy, that an unknown with the athletic credentials is what I'd like to see. Someone who you can visualize running around in the jungle, wrestling lions and gorillas, um, with some acting chops. I don't think he should be a wooden slab. I do think that it has to be someone who can interact with whoever's playing Jane or La of Opar. And so, yeah, I don't know of current actors, anyone I can think of for Tarzan off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't either. I'm a bad casting director because, like, I can't. I don't know. Anytime I hear some casting news, well, the first ever was Batman, Michael Keaton, and I thought, oh my God, it's Beetlejuice, it's Mr. Mom, this is garbage. And then I love that movie. And I'm like, okay, so I'm never gonna like literally in 1989, I don't know how old I was, like 10 or 12 or whatever. I'm like, I'm never going to complain about casting ever until I see the thing because I put my foot in my mouth. I know as a kid, but I thought I was smart. And I'm like, I'm never going to put my foot in my mouth again for a casting thing. I have no idea who should play what. This is a weird question, but do you like Tarzan with shoes or in barefoot? Because sometimes when I see him with the shoes on, I feel that's weird. I don't know why. That bugged me about Wolf Larson because he had the boots, and I thought, why do you have boots on? That's weird. I don't know why. Is that just me being weird or?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. The producers, Keller Entertainment, all of their they did the Tarzan Manhattan movie, then they did with Wolf Larson, then they did the Joe Lara. He always had those sort of Apache type boots. That was just a quirk with them. I think they try to hide it. Ron Ely supposedly had half-inch calluses on the soles of his foot, and went barefoot everywhere. But even so, every now and then, if you look closely, Ron Ely or Johnny, you see they have little slippers on. Casper, did the same thing, toughened up his feet, and he's barefoot in some, but in other scenes you can see he's got something on. So it's tough, slice your foot open and your leading man is sidelined for a while.
Yeah, and they did that with Lou Ferrigno, man, in Incredible Hulk. You'd see the green slippers. Sometimes they're like, oh, it's the worst too if you buy it on like DVD or Blu-ray where they really like cleared it up really nicely.
Yeah.
When I was watching Tarzan Escapes, I noticed right away. I'm like, oh, he's got like a little thing underneath his foot. I know it's tough because the guy cuts his foot, and yeah, you're like, well, now production is stopped because you can't do anything. James is like thinking unknown. Yeah, right, exactly. Like you need to have. Would you prefer? Okay, this is an interesting idea. Would you prefer someone who is more physically like better at representing Tarzan, but maybe his acting isn't as good, so they have to dumb him down a little bit? Or would you prefer that the acting be a little bit better, and then if you have to sacrifice some of the physicality?
Well, I think there's Hollywood sort of turned a corner on this. Nowadays, you can get the physical trainer, like look what Skarsgård did with his body. You
Yeah.
can turn an actor into a world-class, at least you can make an actor look like a world-class athlete.
Right.
So, and it's harder to teach a world-class athlete to act unless they've just got charisma. Sometimes charisma can go a long way towards, covering up acting flaws. So definitely there's a happy medium. Like I said, you don't want a guy who's got all the athletic credentials, but he's just a slab there and can't emote or interact with anyone. He's got to draw them in. I think generally the thinking now in Hollywood is you find the best actor and you train them up, spend a few months on a chicken and brown rice diet or whatever, and cut calories and just get them ripped up. And so I think that's the thinking in Hollywood is you want the biggest name, and then you'll just make him into Tarzan.
Yeah, I think like my favorite movie also, and one of my favorite characters is Conan the Barbarian, and Conan with Schwarzenegger is literally my favorite movie. Which, if you don't think some people don't like it, but I would say to anyone out there who's listening, if you don't like the movie, rewatch it again and really pay attention because it's actually very good. But yeah, they sacrificed Conan's character a little bit because Conan was smart and he would talk. He's a good talker and all that. And they went with a physical performance where back then the thinking wasn't like, oh, let's just find someone and really bulk them up. It was like it was all a physical performance, and they just took away dialogue. So Conan doesn't
Right.
say much, and then it's like, oh, okay. And I feel that that's probably what's going on with Johnny. They're like the guy's he's like a super athlete, like he's awesome. But then it's like, well, I guess we're just gonna have him say, just the one or two lines here and there just to get his point across. And I mean, it is what it is. I think people still have that impression of Tarzan and they have that impression of Conan, no matter how many things come after that to say that no, these characters are smart and they're articulate, but the perception is still there. I don't know. Yeah, you need to have someone who's a good actor who you can transform them, and yeah, you just put them on some kick ass like powerlifting and get them into shape or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, for Greystoke, I don't know who. For Tarzan, okay.
The ballet artist, the ballet dancer.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Oh, they were thinking of. Oh, that would have been. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, there have been different athletes proposed for the role over the years, and I think Burroughs had a little bit of fun with that in his novels. He has one guy who's a marathon runner who becomes Tarzan, which today we think of marathon runners as skin and bones. And then they have another guy who's a dancer, a Daguio dancer, I think, who is playing Tarzan in the film. So he sort of had fun with that, with finding athletes who were sort of on the outer fringes of what we would consider and casting them as Tarzan.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully Tarzan, continues on in some form. So I think we're gonna wrap it up in a minute or two. Yeah, I definitely want to see him get a little bit more recognition just because he's like one of the first heroes or whatever you want to call it. And it's just important to keep these characters alive. Like I want to see Doc Savage. I want to see everything. I want to see like the Spider because I like the serials. It's like I want to see every like Doc Savage needs to get in there. They're going to do a Doc Savage thing that kind of went nowhere. Oh, this is my buddy Sean who co-hosts with me. Yeah, most mainstream you can get. That is true. Yeah, yeah. I think Disney Tarzan movie super helped because I think a lot of generic people were like, "Wow, this is really good." And kids, if you get kids, then they'll grow up loving that, and then that gets them inspired to do
Yes.
stuff. Right? That's the
Yes.
whole. Right.
Disney was in no way a negative. It was absolutely a positive. Could it have been more of a positive if it had been followed up with more Tarzan stuff and more stuff geared to adults and geared to these kids as they were growing up? I would have liked to have seen. It seems like we have these sort of droughts. It was, we went from 1999 Disney until 2016 with the Legend of Tarzan, Skarsgård.
Yeah.
Same thing, there was a big drought from Mike Henry's last Tarzan movie to Greystoke with the Bo Derek thing in there in between.
Yeah.
So it's like every one of these Tarzan movies gets in development hell and takes 14 years. You gotta compress that time. So you're not taking 14 years to get Tarzan to the screen. My fault isn't with Disney. It's that other people did not capitalize on what Disney did. And they should have. They should have used that as a springboard to really make Tarzan huge.
They did do toys and stuff, and I got the toys. And then I remember there was toys that had come out that weren't specific to the cartoon, but there was John Carter toys, and I guess they were like the 5-inch. It was like the John Carter toys and Tarzan. He had like armor and stuff. I had some of those where you could put the armor on him, and I thought, oh, that was cool. But look, it needs to be like He-Man, where there's a toy line, a cartoon that you can watch every time, and then there's comic books, and it's like that. Well, that all led to a movie that people didn't like, but I kind of love it. But anyway, it's like, you need to have something like that. It can't just be like there's one great Tarzan cartoon, everyone goes home, and then they just go on with their business,
Yeah.
because it's not a franchise at that point. It's just one movie that you're like, oh, that, like you were saying earlier, it's like, well, it's a standalone movie. Okay, cool. And then that's the end of it.
Yeah. You've got to have that sort of integrated synergy across all the platforms, all the markets. It's got to be really, I think, as I mentioned before, I think that's sort of the Tarzan is at a disadvantage because it's not this huge, megalith like Marvel or DC, where they have all these well-known characters. Burroughs certainly had a lot of characters, but they haven't really all broken out yet. So Tarzan and John Carter are sort of shouldering the load here.
And they could do something too, because Guardians of the Galaxy, when that came out, and I'm a comic book reader, I didn't care about the Guardians in comics. I never read any of their issues. I thought they're okay, whatever. Then that movie came out, I was like, wow, this is such a great movie, and I loved it. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't give a crap about those characters before. So you can do it. You can have something where people don't know this idea of like, well, they don't know the character. Well, it's up to the writers and the production to make it good. It's not
absolutely.
Like, yeah, like, Tarzan's been around for 100 years or whatever. I'm sure we can figure something out. It's like you can do something with this character. It's on you, and blaming the character or saying, well, nobody knows. It's like, well, you can make it known and just, put some faith into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up there, Tracy. This was awesome. This is awesome talking to you about. I didn't think Tarzan would be my first thing. I thought, oh my god, I'm going to get bombarded with Batman because everyone wants to talk about Batman. That's all anyone wants to talk about. But any final things you want to talk about? And I put your links in the description of this video, so this will be put onto YouTube, and your website will be in the description, so everyone can link to that. But yeah, any final thoughts before we end off?
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy talking about this stuff, especially with someone else who's, as passionate or more passionate than I am and is knowledgeable. It's a really special to be able to talk about this stuff with someone who knows it. And so thank you for having me. My books are both still in print. They're available on Amazon or from your specialty retailer who can order it for you. I look forward to, future projects in this franchise and hopefully making this franchise better known. That's sort of my life mission, is to bring Edgar Rice Burroughs' works to new audiences and new generations. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think they need to put a little asterisk on all these movies that come out saying, oh yeah, and this thing that you thought was so cool in this movie, we took that from Burroughs.
Yes.
I think Harry Potter, JK needs to write a check. No, God.
Yes.
I'm not picking on JK. Harry Potter's cool. She's got a lot of cool stuff in that series. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. All right, guys, we're going to end off there. So if you do want to be a part of any of these fan talks, let me know in any of the comments. You can follow me at Lifetime Nerd on Twitter. Just comment anywhere and we will, work something out. It doesn't have to be Marvel or DC as we see. It could be any character. It could be pulp characters, whatever you want to talk about. I'm sure I've got some kind of opinion. I'll make up an opinion if I don't have one. But all right, guys, thank you for everyone in the chat. And I will see you Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about Godzilla versus Kong. We're going to be talking about Invincible. And we're going to be talking about The Falcon and Winter Soldier. So that'll be this Sunday. All right, guys, thank you for watching. See ya.
Thank you.